Ladies and gentlemen, renegades, rebels, and outlaws, welcome to the Chong Show, episode 11. I'm joined by Emillea, the former world champion, the warlord of the Warsong Offensive, and Enderstone, the wrathful Worgen, the bestial brawler. To my right is Enderstone, to my left is Emillea. Emillea is returning to the show. It's been a while since we have had Toby on the program. Toby, what's been going on, man? How have you been?
I've been good. Just been hanging in there with school and everything, finishing up the last semester now. So, hoping everything's just looking up from right now.
And joining the show for the first time, we have Enderstone. Ender, introduce yourself to the audience as we ask all of our first time guests. How did you get into WoW?
I had a few of my friends just offer it up to me when I was pretty young, and they just leveled me a character and just waited for that time when I could eventually play for myself.
All right, Enderstone, welcome to the show. We have the big topic of Battle for Azeroth to cover here. And first off, we are going to talk about the new continents for both the Horde and Alliance. Again, welcome to the Chong Show, episode 11. We will be discussing Battle for Azeroth here tonight with my guests, Emillea and Enderstone. Let's get right into it here, gentlemen. We have the Alliance continent of Cool Tyrus. At long last, Jaina Proudmoore's home kingdom takes center stage. The architecture that we've seen so far from BlizzCon reminds me of a mix between Northrend and Khazmodan. And for those of you who might not know, Khazmodan is all the dwarven lands from Ironforge to Blackrock Mountain, and Northrend, just really the Howling Fjord, kind of Borean tundra feel to it. Looks great. Can't wait to get to that. And then we have the Horde capital of Zandalar, the fabled heart of the Zandalari Empire. Amazing architecture there. I'm baffled, surprised, delighted by the architecture that we have seen from the Zandalari capital. It really has an Aztec Mayan art style, a theme to it, and it reminds me of the old Zul'Gurub architecture, but with an updated take. Toby, we will start with you. What do you think about Zandalar and Kultiris? What are you looking forward to about the zones? What's your impression on them so far?
Honestly, from what I've seen of the pictures and that on the website, I'm honestly excited to see them. Like they all both look really great. All the pictures look good. I agree with you on the Zandalar, that architecture. I can't wait to see it in game fully and be in it. I think that's the best I'm looking forward to, or like the most I'm looking forward to is the just the architecture in both zones and just kind of seeing how they were put together fully.
Ender, what do you think about the new continents?
I believe it's a great addition. Both of them have been teased for plenty of years, and with the Legion, Call to soldiers and all of that in Bajara, so it's been teased there, and I just can't wait. It's a great addition, plenty of lore behind it. It's just something that's been long coming for a while now.
Well, the original WoW, classic vanilla WoW, they were going to add Kultiris. It was going to be another continent off the coast of Khazmodan, so off the coast of wetlands. And they pulled it out at the last second. They removed it, scrapped it, and finally, all these years later, what is it, 14 years later, we finally have Kultiris. So I have long awaited the debut of Kultiris, and I've long awaited Zandalari Horde Capital. I was delighted when they announced these two continents at BlizzCon. So can't wait for either of those. If I had to pick one over the other that I'm really excited to see, it would have to be Zandalar. I can't wait to see what's up with King Rastakhan, and all the Zandalari trolls, see what they've been up to since Cataclysm. So that will be amazing. Can't wait to see those new continents. Uh, Moving right along here, do we have any thoughts before we do that on the new continents. Let's put it like this. If you had to pick one or the other, like I just did, which continent are you most excited to explore, to quest through, to level through? We'll start with Toby.
Honestly, I kind of want to go through Kol Taros, is just because of those bridges in the pictures and everything. I just want to see that how that all is put together. I feel like that would be the best zone to level in, almost. So ally.
Ender?
I'm really looking forward to Zandalore, considering we've had plenty of troll-themed areas, but with all of like the new art style, like all of the blood-related stuff in Zandalore, I really like that idea, and I can't wait to level through it.
All right, so moving on here in our coverage of Battle for Azeroth, we have Plunder Uncharted Islands, a new invasion-like system. It's going to be similar to Invasions, but hopefully incorporating my naval combat idea that I had years ago. And I'm not sure if I mentioned it on a earlier episode of the Chong Show, but basically, if you've played Assassin's Creed Black Sails, my idea was to have PvP combat where you had your own customizable ship. So hopefully this is a step towards that becoming a reality, and hopefully it at least incorporates some aspects of that as we group up with friends and sail to new adventures. This is straight from the Battle for Azeroth site, but it says, set sail for the previously unmapped Isles of Azeroth, battle in groups of 3 as you race against cunning rival intruders or enemy players to collect the island's resources. Constantly evolving challenges await as you traverse frozen landscapes near Northrend. Open the gates of an abandoned Gilnean castle and navigate a war between elementals and more. How about that? From Northrend to Gilneas. This seems like it's right up my alley. It seems like repeatable yet unique and distinct content. Can't wait for the Uncharted Islands and the new plundering system. So we'll start with Enderstone this time. Ender, what do you think about this new system that's coming in Battle for Azeroth, or I should say, a new take on the invasions system already in game?
I feel it's a great addition. It's entirely new to be using very like things like this. In Garrisons, there was the harbor, I believe. That that wasn't very adventurous, but this is a whole new take on it. This can add so many possibilities for loot and all other little bits of lore.
The Garrison shipyard was really just a tease, wasn't it? It's like, oh, we know you don't like followers. We know you don't like command table missions, but here you go. Here's these exciting, awesome ships. And here's your followers. Now send them out on those missions, and you sit back in the garrison. That was an abysmal system. But this should deliver, and this should be fantastic. So, Toby, your thoughts on the Uncharted Islands?
Thunder Ender, I think it's a great addition. I honestly can't wait because similar to you, I played the Assassin's Creed Black Flag, and I just love the whole pirate ship kind of way, and I completely agree. I can't wait to see it, and it's just going to be an amazing lot of amazing.
It's going to be huge. No, I'm kidding. We don't want to go that way. Anyhow, yes, Plunder Uncharted Islands. That will be a new system in Battle for Azeroth, similar to the invasion system, but with friends, group of 3, and with plenty of PvP and new locations to explore. All right, this is exciting to me to discuss this next topic. It's exciting to discuss any topic here on the Chong Show, but this one specifically is my favorite feature for Battle for Azeroth. We have the Warfronts. Head to the front lines and take part in large-scale 20-player cooperative warfront to claim a strategic location. Build up your faction's forces, lead the charge as your troops lay siege to the objective, and battle the enemy commanders as they make their last stand in this new PvE mode inspired by classic Warcraft RTS battles. So basically how these are going to work, obviously right there in the description, 20-player co-op missions inspired by those classic RTS games. And my favorite feature of the expansion, as I said, is hands down the Warfronts. Hopefully, it allows for strategic maneuvers and for your strategy to really be incorporated and played out there. So we will see whether they have flanks, counter flanks, different archers that you can set up, your cavalry that you can have in reserve, whatever. We'll see if that strategic aspect of the RTS games is there. Sounds like it's going to be, but this is the feature that I'm most looking forward to for Battle for Azeroth. So we'll start with Ender. What do you think about the Warfronts?
I personally have not really played into OTS games, but with this new news, like this new kind of mode in Warcraft or WoW, I think it could get me into it, but I haven't seen much gameplay of it. I'm gonna have to see how it turns out, but personally, I'm excited for it.
Toby?
Just to get clarification, what is RTS again?
Real-time strategy.
Okay, that's what I thought. I I'm also looking forward to it. It's going to be great to see you, of all people, how your plans go into action and everything. Because, as you've seen, I'm not the best at strategy all the time, but watching you gives me a lot of new ideas. You've seen me pull out of your book in the middle of fights. So,
Well, we all know that the strategic mastermind of the guild is yours truly. So yeah, that's the aspect I want to see more of. But anything else about the Battlefronts you want to talk about here tonight, Emillea?
not really. I feel like it's going to be a great challenge for all new players and even returning players. It's going to be interesting to say the least.
All right, now here is a new carrot on a stick feature. I'm not really excited about this, but nonetheless, infuse armor with titanic might. Essentially, it's artifact weapons, but now with your armor. So you're going to empower your armor instead of your weapons. Not really that innovative. When I look at this, I see, as I said, a carrot on a stick. It's more of a grind. It's a constant grind. It's a never ending push towards empowering your armor. And as bad as artifact power and that grind has been, I don't think it is as bad as this is going to be, purely for the reason that how's this going to work? Like, every time you get a new piece of gear, you're going to have to re-level it all over again. Are you going to hesitate to upgrade gear? It seems, like it's underdeveloped, and it seems like it could potentially lead to a huge problem throughout the expansion. So this is probably the one feature that I'm really concerned about heading into Battle for Azeroth. Infusing armor with titanic might. Emillea, what's your take on it?
Honestly, I feel the same. It's just copying like the artifacts currently, and I'm just kind of upset in general. Like you said, it's basically turning our gear into artifacts, but they're getting rid of our artifact weapons as it is, and I don't see the point to that if we're already making the rest of our gear similar to our artifacts that we currently have. It's I see it as being redundant, and they're just gonna kill. That's gonna kill the game more than anything else. Is having to do that grind again for new weapons and gear, and how that's gonna be implemented, like you said. Because if it's implemented where every new piece of gear you have to keep running, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna give up, and I feel like a lot of people are gonna do the same. They're gonna be like, "This is bullshit."
Well, apparently it's a necklace that you get, and how the leveling system is going to work is similar to how the Netherlight Crucible works for your relics. So that's not that bad, and hopefully they handle the grind where it's manageable. But still, as you said, Emillea, why would you add this and take away artifact weapons when players have already invested so much time and effort into the artifact weapons already? Enderstone, what do you think about this armor and titanic might being infused into it?
I think the grind for artifacts was enough, but it could be new, like making your armor better, like increasing that level by level. That could be painful, but it could have very good rewards. And as you said, with having to level up new armor every single new piece you get, there's probably a solution to that. Maybe transferable stats or possible buffs for each new piece of armor you get.
And I would imagine, just like with another like Crucible, that if you get a new piece of gear, you automatically level up the traits back to where they were. You just get to pick new traits. So hopefully that mitigates some of the grind for that, and it's not just, oh, here's your artifact power system now with a necklace, which is, let's be honest, what they did with class order halls and garrisons. Oh, no, 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 no. This is something completely new. This isn't the same thing that you've been doing for the past 2 years with Warlords of Draenor sitting in your garrison, slamming your head off the desk. This is something completely different, and it was the same exact thing, only with 6, depending if you unlocked it, to 5 followers. So yeah, it seems like the exact same thing where they took garrisons and put it in class order halls. It seems like they're doing the same thing with the artifact system and a neck piece, and they're disguising it as a completely new system, but really it's kind of just a refined version of the previous. All right, so moving on, we have a world divided, 6 new zones with world quests, and we have the world bosses as well being entered into that. 6 new zones, world divided, world PvP, world quest, everything you've come to expect from Legion and from WoW since Legion's release. But Enderstone, Emillea, we'll start with Emillea. What are you looking forward to? What do you hope they change about World Quest? Do you think the system is good as is? Do you think they should change anything about the world boss situation that we have going on right now? What do you think?
I kind of like the system how it is. It's just there's a point where I hit with each of my characters where world quests become irrelevant, and I think that's the biggest thing is they need to keep the world quests relevant even before, like, yeah, I can go to Argus and do stuff kind of relevant, but like even gear wise I can't do world quests anymore, or most of the world quests don't give me anything overly useful, and I feel like that's what is bad about the world quests, and I hope they change. I hope they make them a little bit more like, yeah, come do these because you're going to get a lot of out of it, rather than come do these and you might get something.
The randomness of gear really needs to be done away with in Battle for Azeroth. And if they're going to have the randomness of gear, then they need to have a vendor where you can trade. Let's say you get an upgrade, all right, and you have a great piece of gear, you have a great cape, you have a great helmet, and you get a new piece of gear. And it's not an upgrade, but it would be an upgrade in another slot. There should be a vendor where you can go trade that in. There's no reason to not have that. And I think if they're going to continue this randomness with gear, or this RNG, then they need to implement vendors and sort of mitigate that bad luck. Ender, what do you think about the world quests and the world bosses in Legion? What would you change in Battle for Azeroth? Or would you leave it the same?
For the world quests, I think they're fine as is. They can provide a very good way to level up a new character, and they can give you some pretty good gear early on. But as for world bosses, there's a big problem with them. In Legion, they provide a incredibly small chance to get an item, even with the uh, chance boosting items, those medals. They don't. They usually just give you artifact power. Hopefully, they increase that chance of getting even an item, like possibly a epic. Doesn't have to be a legendary. Just have to increase the chance, and that would keep more people coming to do it more often.
You know what I'd like to see in PvE? I would like to see a old honor system type deal implemented. And what I mean by that is the old honor system. You would do arenas, you would do battlegrounds, and you would get honor, and you could go buy gear from the vendor. I feel like for world bosses and for world quests, you should have a guaranteed reward for everything you do PvE. And you save up, you save. I don't even care if it's a hefty price, but I think there needs to be something like that, only if they're going to keep the randomness of gear. And keep in mind, let's say you do a world quest. Right now in Argus, okay, you get Veiled Argonite, maybe. That's great. You go buy a 9, 10 plus piece of gear. They need to do something like that, but for everything PvE, so that everything feels like a reward. And so when you do a world quest, when you do a world boss, and let's say you do a world boss, let's say you get 150 slices of Swiss cheese, let's just use as an example. So you take your Swiss cheese and you can go and you do 2 world bosses, you get a piece of gear. If you do, you have to do 5 world quests to get that same amount of Swiss cheese. But the point being, you're getting rewarded. You have a goal in mind. That's what I miss from Wrath of the Lich King. In Wrath of the Lich King, you could do dungeons, you could do dailies. You always had that gear in the vendor that you were working towards. You always had something to do. I have never completed more dungeons in a single expansion than I did in Wrath. Why? Because there was a substantial reward, and you could gear specifically through dungeons. You never had to raid. You could do world quests. You could gear that way. That's what I miss, and that's what I hope they add in Battle for Azeroth as to my changes that I would add to world quests and world bosses. You're listening to The Chong Show, episode 11, with Emillea and Enderstone. Enderstone, a first-time guest on the show. Happy to have him, and happy to have returning for the second time, Emillea, warlord and future officer, no doubt, here tonight in attendance for this episode 11, where we discuss Battle for Azeroth, our thoughts, and an in-depth preview of the upcoming expansion. Now, keep in mind the final 2 features that I want to talk about here upcoming are the communities feature, which is going to help the guild recruit from across multiple servers, supposedly. And from the site, it says, find adventurers who share common interests through in-game communities and join cross-realm social groups. So basically, this takes the guild and it opens up the doors for players from across the various World of Warcraft servers to come in, attend events. It's a great thing. It's a great system. I can't wait for it. Hopefully, it is implemented as they previewed at BlizzCon, because it's going to be a great thing for all the low pop realms, and especially for guilds like us. Oh, that's right. There are no guilds like us. We are the best guild in the World of Warcraft. I am sure of that. And this feature is, next to the Warfronts, the one I'm looking forward to the most. The other feature, new dungeons and raids. What a surprise. What a shocker. New dungeons and raids in an expansion? This has never been done before. I'm shocked. You know what this Enter a World Divided part of the website reminds me of? It reminds me of when you make a sales pitch and you pad it because you don't have enough stuff to put up in the sales pitch. I'm being completely honest here. It seems like they have so little planned for Battle for Azeroth. It could be summarized into like 2 different sections of the page that they had to add, that they're adding new dungeons and raids. Like, okay, we got that. Don't you guys agree? It seems like there's a couple new systems, and those new systems, the newest stuff that we've been given, as I said on episode 10 of the Chong Show, is really just the skeleton of the expansion. It's kind of worrisome. But at the same time, maybe they don't want to promise too much, and then it ends up like Warlords of Draenor, where they cut a lot of stuff. What do you guys think?
I think I agree. I hope it doesn't turn out like how it has before.
Honestly, I agree as well.
So communities, Warfronts, those are two features that I am really looking forward to. They're going to be great. And I don't mean to knock Blizzard. I don't mean to knock Battle for Azeroth. It seems like a fantastic expansion. But this discussion of seemingly a lack of meat on the bone for Battle for Azeroth leads me to this. We'll start with Enderstone. How would you rate what Blizzard has previewed so far?
I'm gonna have to give it around a, gotta say 3, because as you mentioned, it's not much. There's lots of returning content that we've seen in all of the expansions, and there's the new stuff that couldn't turn out as expected. I just hope that when it comes out, everything is there as promised and it doesn't flunk like some expansions like Warlords have.
Well, let's talk about that, right? The potential's there for any WoW expansion to fail, like Warlords of Draenor. The difference being for Warlords of Draenor that there was an absurd amount of hype around it. I don't think Battle for Azeroth is going to fail. I think it's going to succeed. But we'll get to that later where I think it'll rank. And we'll get to it after Emillea and I give our thoughts on how we would rate the hype, the previews for Battle for Azeroth so far. So, Emillea, take it away.
Honestly, I'd probably give it a 3. Also, I really like the previews, especially the cinematics. Those I really felt for and like love them. And I like what they're doing to an extent of what's coming for this next X pack, but I'm not fully sure how things are going to go about and how they're going to fully change up the system. And a lot of it, like Ender said, is there's some returning content that I'm worried about, though. Like so I don't know. I think it has potential, but it really depends on how the dev team implements everything.
I would give it a 1 out of 5. This has to be one of the worst previews for an expansion that I've seen in my entire 10 years playing World of Warcraft. We have Plunder Uncharted Islands. We have Storm the Warfronts. We have Infused Armor with Titanic Might. We have 2 new continents. Okay, let's break it down like this. So you have Storm of the Warfronts. There's our new feature. There's the crown jewel of Battle for Azeroth. There's something we didn't have before. What have they given us on it? Well, it's a 20-player co-op mission. Well, it's inspired by classic Warcraft RTS battles. Well, what does that mean? What does that mean? Look, how is that going to work? There's too many questions on it, okay? Then we have Plunder Uncharted Islands. We have Infused Armor with Titanic Might. Well, those are from Legion. So they don't really need to give that much information on those. So you would think, hey guys, I'm Ian Hazakostas. I'm going to tell you about Titanic Might and how it's basically going to work like your artifact weapon. And then we have Uncharted Islands, which are kind of like invasion points, but you're going to go to different islands with a group of 3. Now let's get to the meat of it and talk about the Warfronts. That should have been the main thing they discussed at BlizzCon, and I'm disappointed they didn't go further into it. So for that reason, for the fact that they have so much fluff on that site where it's just, hey, we got new dungeons and raids. Well, we knew that was going to be there. Hey, we have 2 new continents. Okay, cool. We've had continents before. Hey, we're bringing back features from the previous expansion. Well, you did that from Warlords to Legion. So what's new, Blizzard? What are you giving me that's new? And that's why I give it a 1 out of 5, because I'm not saying the expansion's 1 out of 5. That jury's still out. But as far as the hype, as far as what they've given us, I have to give it a 1 out of 5. Very disappointing. Any last thoughts on the hype for Battle for Azeroth and your expectations for it?
Not for me.
I'm good.
All right, so let's move to this point. This is what I foreshadowed earlier. How do you feel Battle for Azeroth, Enderstone and Emillea, will rank alongside past expansions. We'll start with Enderstone. You have, I think, at the top of everybody's mind, Wrath of the Lich King and Burning Crusade. And there's been so many expansions, you have to give these guys ties. Like, you have to say, okay, for some people it's going to be Wrath, for some people it's going to be Burning Crusade, but we can all agree that tied for first is Wrath of the Lich King and Burning Crusade. That was the pinnacle of expansions. And then behind that, I think you have the tier of Legion and Mists of Pandaria. And then behind that, you have Hello Kitty Adventure, you have Animal Crossing, you have some developer game that never picked up momentum on Steam. Okay, that's a little bit brutal. You have Cataclysm, you have Watching Paint Dry. Okay, that's a little bit brutal too. And then you have Warlords of Draenor at the very bottom. So where do you think, how many slices of cheese? 1 out of 5, no, I'm kidding, Ender. But how would you rank, how would you rank Battle for Azeroth? Where do you think it's going to place amongst the expansions of the past?
I think I'd rank it just below Burning Crusade. Because, or no, I take that back. Just below Legion. Because the main problem with that is the new artifact esque system. Like that could be the demanding factor that could ruin it all. But at the same time, there were so many new things that could be groundbreaking and amazing. So it's kind of difficult. I'm just gonna put it at below Legion.
And let's classify this as Tier 1, which is Wrath and Burning Crusade. Tier 2 is Legion and Mists. And then we have Tier 3, which is Cataclysm and Warlords. So you would bump that down to Tier 4, and you'd put Battle for Azeroth right behind that Tier 2 expansion list, right?
Yep.
Okay, just for clarity so everybody knows and we don't all have different rankings that we have to explain. Toby, where would you place Battle for Azeroth? Where do you think, what's your prediction? If you had to look into a crystal ball and tell us all what your prediction was, what would it be for Battle for Azeroth?
I'd say it has the potential to be as good as Legion. So I would say tier 2.
I think it's definitely, I mean, I'm almost willing to guarantee this, that it's better than Warlords and Cataclysm.
Yeah.
I think here's what's going to save Battle for Azeroth. Since Ender, you've mentioned multiple times that, and Toby has as well, that Titanic might and that whole infused armor system may tank the expansion. I would argue the two things that are going to save Battle for Azeroth and rank it that high on the list: Plunder Uncharted Islands, that feature, and then Storm the Warfronts. You know, those two big highlights on the site. Uh, the Warfronts and the Uncharted Islands, those two things. Why do I say that? Because those are things they can continuously add content to. They can add new islands. They can add new encounters. And they can add new battles in the Warfront situation. The first of which is going to be Stromgarde. They announced that at BlizzCon, and I can't wait for that. That has me just giddy with excitement for the Warfronts feature. So I think Warfronts and Uncharted Islands are really what's going to sell this expansion for me and what I'm looking forward to, as long as, or I should say, in unison with the new continents, the new races, you know, exploring all that, all the good stuff that comes with a new expansion. So I would rank it. Drum roll, please. I would rank Battle for Azeroth, if I had to give it a rating. I think I said Legion would be the most successful expansion since Wrath, and I think my rating for it was 4 out of 5, 3.5 out of 5, something like that. So if I had to rate Battle for Azeroth, if I'm giving a prediction for my rating, I would say the same with Legion. I'd have to agree with Emillea there, and that's why I say it's definitely better than Cataclysm and Warlords. I would say it's right there neck and neck with Legion. So I'd probably give it a 3.5, 4 stars out of 5. And that's my take on Battle for Azeroth and how I think it's going to go. I think it'll be a fun expansion, despite the abysmal spread of features that they have up on the site.
The one thing I would like to point out that we did not discuss is PvP being taken away.
Oh, yes, that is a very good talking point. I covered it in episode 10 of the Chong Show, where I said, World PvP is being taken away. You're going to have to flag now to engage in PvP. My take is there. You can find it on Revolution Radio. Episode 10 of the Chong Show, I give my take on World PvP, and is it a good thing that it's being removed? Now that we have Ender and Emillea on the show, let's start with Emillea, since you brought it up. What do you think about World PvP being removed, so to speak, in Battle for Azeroth?
So as a level 110 as cap, I'm kind of salty about it because I like world PvP. Yeah, every now and then again it gets annoying because you might not be into it, or you're on a low level, or you're on a low geared tune and you get ganked by a group of people. But I mean, you're at max level, that's what you can expect at that. But I like it in the aspect that we're no longer going to get ganked while leveling. I think that's the best thing that's going to come out of it is I can be a level 20 in a neutral zone and not get ganked by someone else. It'd be like playing on a PvE server, no issues. But I feel like they went too far and took it away even at 110. I feel like they should have left a function in there or something that would have said once you hit max level, you're constantly flagged in neutral zones. Like you always are.
Ender?
I think it has its ups and downs. So the downside is you can't really do like big raids or big events, but the good part about it is there's a lower chance of having the experience of leveling or just exploring ruined, and that, as we know from AFC and almost SNF, it it can cause big problems. But as I said, it can cancel itself out with the negative and the positive.
All right, so any final thoughts on World PvP or Battle for Azeroth before I move on to the final and closing announcements?
I'm all set.
Same here.
All right, so here we are. This is big. For Warsong Offensive, I am happy to officially announce here on the Chong Show episode 12. Or excuse me, episode 12. I've said episode 11 a couple times tonight, so disregard that. It's episode 12. But for the Warsong Offensive, we will be shifting to PvE in Battle for Azeroth. And what I mean by that specifically, Warsong Offensive will be shifting to raiding in Battle for Azeroth. Very excited to announce that. We will be pushing progression again. The last time I was raid lead was in Warlords of Draenor, and that was on Alliance. So this will be the first time that Warsong Offensive has ever engaged in PvE content. Very excited for that. Emillea, what are you expecting from our PvE runs coming up here, and what do you think about it?
Honestly, I'm excited to hear it because I've been really wanting to raid even in this expansion, so I know there's a backstory with this guild before I joined of being a raiding guild, so I can't wait to see it full in person. I honestly can't wait to be part of it because when the expansion comes out, I should be out of school and have more free time, hopefully.
Ender, what are your thoughts on the Warsong Offensive shift to raiding in Battle for Azeroth?
I think it's a great idea. There can be the PvP and there can be the PvE. I think switching back to PvE is a great idea, allowing a bigger variety of players to come into the guild and find something to do that they enjoy. So it can bring new officers, more core members, all of that, and that can be a great switch.
Well, this goes hand in hand with the communities feature. We're going to have a massive influx of players. The guild's going to be massive to the point where we won't have a choice. People will get lost in the shuffle. So this kind of breaks it down to where you can go to the Warsong Offensive if you'd like to raid and do PvE, and you can still do arena. We'll still be doing arena. We'll still be doing that, Or you can go, as Ender just mentioned, and what a great segue, into PvP, which the Alliance Revolution will still be engaging in. And the Alliance Revolution will focus entirely on two things in Battle for Azeroth: Warfronts and raided battlegrounds. That's right, with TBI returning, the Alliance Revolution will be allying with TBI, and for the first time in a long time, we will be doing raided battlegrounds on the Alliance. So keep that in mind, everybody. If you want to do raiding in Battle for Azeroth, start leveling a Horde character if you don't have one already. If you want to do PvP with the Alliance Revolution and the Crossed Hammers, then you need to start working on those Alliance alts or continue gearing them. Either way, those are the shifts announced officially here on episode 12 of the Chong Show with Enderstone and Emillea. I want to thank them both again for joining me here on this episode 12 review of Battle for Azeroth. Gentlemen, any final and closing thoughts on Battle for Azeroth before we wrap up the show here with a nice red and blue bow?
I think I'm all set.
I'm all set.
Ladies and gentlemen, renegades, rebels, and outlaws, we are on the road to Battle for Azeroth, September 21st. No date after that. It could be any date before that. And Battle for Azeroth will be live on all World of Warcraft servers. We also have WoW Classic to talk about. As soon as they release some new information, we will be among the first to cover it here on Revolution Radio. Thanks to all of our listeners watching on stream, Twitch, to our live broadcast here. And thanks to all of our future listeners on Revolution Radio. I have been your host, Guildmaster Chong, leading the charge here through episode 12 alongside Warlord Emillea, an officer of the Warsong Offensive, a longtime officer of the Alliance Revolution as well, and Enderstone, the Wrathful Worgen and rising star beneath the Crossed Hammers. That'll do it for episode 12, and until next time, we press on.